Welcome everybody to the work session of the Ocean Township Board of Education. We already took our attendance upstairs. Oh, somebody not muted. Good.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to welcome our new business administrator, Jeff Hastings, to our Ocean Township family. And I'm going to begin with my president's report. Our summer programs, our ESY programs ended for the summer of 2023 on a high note. I'd like to thank the Italian American Association for providing Zeppelis to our summer students, and especially thank Lexi DeFilia for bringing those Zeppelis to the students to enjoy. I hope you had a chance, everyone in the community, to attend our summer festival at Palea Park. Just a note about Dr. Morgan, who is planning and preparing to welcome our new staff members to the Spartan family on August 21st. At 8:30 a.m. Any board members that are going to attend, perhaps you can let Ms. Weldon know. And I know Dr. Morgan's going to provide a wonderful program for our new teachers and new staff. The Wanamassa PTA is sponsoring a meet and greet for all families to welcome our new principal, John Bosman, on August 25th. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
I'll take that if you're good. Why don't I'll hold that one. Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
And I'd also like to thank Ms. Hagerman and Ms. Kazuba for welcoming our new vice principal, Kason Jackson, to the Ocean Township High School family. To continue my report, one of our board goals has been to increase transparency of board business to the community. And with that goal in mind, I'd like to bring up an issue because of repeated inquiries that both Mr. Weinstein and I have received via email, text, phone calls regarding the legal bills related to a complaint filed with the School Ethics Commission. These bills have been an unexpected expense for the Board of Education. And I know that many community members have questions about it. And I'd like to ask Mr. Hastings to perhaps share some information with the community regarding an invoice from both David Rubens and perhaps Mr. Taylor as related to the ethics complaint.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, the district did receive invoices from both firms. The amount from the Florio firm was $5,355. The amount from the Rubin firm was $14,635, for a total of about $19,990.
Madam President, I'll just add that July was my firm's first month on board as your attorney, and thank you for the opportunity to be of service. Of the approximate 65 hours that my firm billed, about 30 hours of it, or half, was dedicated to issues related to that matter, Oprah requests, et cetera. So that number is about half of what our total bill was. Thank you.
Thank you for that information. I'm going to open it up for any comments or questions from the Board of Education.
Just to, sorry.
Yes, Mr. McCoy.
Clarity on that comment. I apologize. So the dedicated amount that was due just to the ethics complaint from that invoice that was just mentioned would be roughly $3,000. Is that what you're saying? Less than $2,800, $2,700?
No, so there are two bills. My bill as your general counsel, and legal bills and the amounts are subject to public information. The entries themselves may be subject to redaction, so I'm not going to say publicly what we did, but generally review, analysis, consultation with the administration, et cetera. There were also several Oprah requests, Open Public Records Act requests regarding voluminous documents, researching regarding privileges, exceptions to disclosure, et cetera. Of about 65 hours of general counsel work, 29.5 hours, or about $5,300, was associated with that particular task. So my total bill was like 11,000. 5,500 of it was for that issue. Mr. Rubin, the attorney who represents two board members, bills at about $300 an hour. His total bill was about $15,000 or $16,000. So totally, you spent about $19,000 last month on that matter.
What was the exact total number?
He bills at $300 an hour and it was $14,635.
And then when you added the two, so it was 19,900 a month.
19,990.
And then
Mr. Weinstein.
Madam President, I just want to thank you for bringing it up because a lot of people have come up to me and asked me what about the claims and also about the responses and about the costs that it was going to incur the district. So I just appreciate you kind of bringing it up.
Welcome. Hayes, Ms. Hayes?
Thank you for bringing that up. And I'm super big on stats and figures and the proper context. And this discussion about attorney costs to taxpayers, I find curious because the taxpayers generally have not gotten our tax bills in previous administrations with our previous superintendent. And I would like the public to know that in the year 17 to 18, this district paid $111,000 just for special education attorney costs. In 2018, $92,000. 2019 to 20, $83,000. 2020 to 21, $53,000. And that is just one firm. So I think I will save a little bit more of my further conversations and comments about this. But my final comment about what I believe is, smoke and mirrors about us talking about one issue's attorney bills. I would also like to remind this board that back in June of 2020, several members of this board, minus me, Shawana, John, and Grace voted no, approved a staffer to get $160,000. So with benefits, I'm going to call it $170,000 for somebody who did not send one email to any parents and to my knowledge, not even report to work. So if we're going to talk about $19,000 for this, I think we should be a little bit more transparent and forthcoming with some of the other bills we have.
Mr.
Thank you.
Weinstein.
Yeah, so first off, the idea of special education charges is totally outside the realm of what we're talking about. This is about board members putting claims. I'll finish.
I'm going to say
Board members putting claims around other board members is totally different. And indemnifying people around that is totally different than what you're talking about, right? It's special education fees to defend either students or defend our position around students. So totally different matters. The other part is what you were talking about. The other one was a employee resolution and agreement, which was made because when you're saying that you weren't involved, is you were not on the board.
Mhm.
So the board as a whole voted unanimously for that resolution.
absolutely
Right.
did not.
And
It was a 7-2 vote, and I can show you.
just as a point of order, she was not recognized by the chair of the meeting.
Right. It should not be back.
And also, by the way, it is a personnel matter that is something that really should not be discussed in this forum.
It should not.
I
It
absolutely,
should not.
I looked it up, and this was all, Mr. Taylor can look it up.
This is a point of order, you have to be recognized by the chair of the board.
Okay.
Are there any other comments regarding the legal bill?
This is a point of order, you again are speaking without recognition from the chair of the board. It's a point of order. The point of order is to call order back to the meeting. It's
Thank you,
parliamentary
Mr.
procedure.
McCarthy. We will,
Okay.
if I have to use the gavel, I will. I hope not to. But are there any other comments from the board? We will allow, excuse me, Mr. McCarthy.
I would just like to point out that the factor that we use in the school district to consider a teacher's salary is roughly $80,000. It's what I've been advised by during budgetary time. It's what I've been advised by our administration to consider when we're thinking about what may be done with reduction in force or potentially amplifying in addition to the
$80,000?
$80,000 is what I've been told by previous members of the administration. I would defer to anyone here if they think that that's a bad factor to use. But so at this point, we're in a district where we have cut 27 positions. And for the record, for the public, that does not mean that we fired 27 teachers. That just means that we removed those positions through retirements and things like that. We have now spent a quarter of a single teacher's position on a complaint that I think is superfluous. I think that we are not in a position, and I will talk to this later in our legislative liaison committee report about our funding and things like that. I don't think that we're in a position to be spending this kind of money. I would urge the members who filed this complaint, specifically Mrs. Talarico, to retract their complaint out of respect to the district.
Thank you for your comments. Any further comments?
I don't have comments in old and new.
Excuse me?
I will reserve my comment for old or new section. Thank
Okay,
you.
then we'll move on
Sure.
to the superintendent's report. Ms. Weldon.
Yes. Well, I did want to announce that we are happy to be presenting a principal meet and greet in the Wanamassa school community in partnership with the Wanamassa PTA. We are urging the Wanamassa community to come out to meet Mr. Bosmans on Monday, August 28th from 6 to 7. I think weather permitting will be mostly out front on the front lawn and perhaps a little bit inside in the all-purpose room, but we are excited to have this event for our community before school starts, so all students and families can get to know Mr. Bosmans and have that initial introduction before school starts, so students feel comfortable on the first day of school. I also wanted to announce that the steam tank winners, Spray, we found out that they will be presenting on Tuesday, October 24th at 10 a.m. at school boards. So board members, if this solidifies or fine tunes your plans for the convention, please let Mr. Hastings know your final plans, but that will be on the floor, on the exhibit floor, Tuesday at 10 a.m. Okay. It was asked previously about whether or not our technology department can accommodate a workshop meeting upstairs, and the answer to that is yes, with outfitting this room for public comment. So I did just want to follow back up on that request from the board.
With the TV on? I'm
Yes.
sorry. Sorry about that.
Can you wait till she finishes and then I'll call on you? Thank you.
Okay. As the board may remember, back in May, Ms. Hanson and myself submitted an application for the Bipartisan Safer Communities Grant. Unfortunately, we were not awarded that grant. We found out last week. I wanted to make you aware of that. We have our esports labs are well on their way to being outfitted. You may have seen the video that we put out last week and then a letter about tryouts. So we're very excited about this. The furniture is in both at intermediate school and the high school. We're putting things together. We're finishing the wiring, but we're very excited to kick off our first ever esports teams here in the district. And we will be looking to put together a ribbon cutting in early September. We'll be inviting the board and the public to an event to really showcase those spaces. We think they're going to be an excellent addition to our offerings, both for extracurricular and at the high school for coursework. So we're excited about that. Another great announcement, we have exhausted our preschool lottery waitlist. We have invited every single person off the preschool waitlist into our program. We're very excited about that.
Yeah.
We have a secondary waitlist of people who called after the lottery of approximately 4 to 6 families. And we hope to also exhaust that list in the next few weeks. So we did want the community to know and the board to know that we have satisfied the lottery list. That's an excellent thing for our district. We're very excited about that. And just a reminder to the public, to anyone listening, parents, please, if you have not tested out your Genesis login in a few months and you may forget your password, please find it. All the necessary, exciting information is days away, and you want to make sure that you can log on to your parent portal. And if you have any trouble with that, you should call your school's main office, and the staff there can help you access your Genesis parent portal accounts. Okay, I'm going to defer to Mr. Hastings for his report, and then I'll come back to introduce Dr. Morgan
For the
for
assessment.
her assessment presentation.
Ms. McGovern, I think had a question on something you had said.
Sure.
I just have
Sorry.
two quick things.
Mhm.
When you spoke about the meeting being allowed to be upstairs, and I assume we'll have to talk about it in business later, but is that with the meeting streaming down here as well?
Yes, all the
Okay.
tech down here and upstairs that you asked for.
Okay.
Is possible.
It's possible.
Right, no, I know,
That's
it's
all
not.
I'm
We'd have to talk
saying,
about it.
right.
My other question is, you mentioned the students that are going to be down at school boards. Is there any staff or faculty that you expect to be presenting down there this year? Or any awards?
Not
No
at this
awards or anything?
time. That doesn't mean no, but at this
Okay.
time, I'm not aware of anyone who's been accepted to present.
Okay, and then my last thing, if I may, very nice letter that you sent out, about the upcoming school. In your letter, you spoke about school spirit and how that's going to be the, theme of the year. I'm just wondering if maybe we should try and have, a board meeting, either the next one or the first one in September, where maybe us as board members come in red, white, and blue and show some school spirit ourselves. Just an idea.
Thank you.
Great idea.
It is. It's a very good
So I
idea to
would-
start the school year.
Possibly the next meeting, is that what we?
Well, maybe the one in September might be more visible.
We can work some things out and I will communicate to the board our plan.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay,
So,
so
Mr. Hasty.
yes, let's do the business administrator report first.
Terrific, thank you. Following up on Ms. Weldon's comment about New Jersey School Boards Association Workshop 2023. That runs from October 23rd to the 26th. That's an opportunity for board members to follow up on their governance mandatory training. So Mr. Cass and I will reach out with any classes you may need to follow up on for the year to make sure you're in compliance with the mandatory training. And also, if you do need to make arrangements or change plans, please again let Mr. Cass or I know so that we can make adjustments to our plans for school boards. Wanted to follow up on the fire escape repairs that have been done to this building over the past 2 weeks. The contractor has been here welding and painting the fire escapes around the building. We expect that to be completed tomorrow, so we're excited about that. The curtain wall at the intermediate school, the preliminary work with that has been completed in terms of resetting some concrete footings for the building and for those window sections. However, there has been a delay with some materials delivery, so we were hoping to get started this week, but it looks like the plan from the contractor is next week. And we're working with the architect to make sure they get this started as soon as possible. And they're working with the contractor and with the manufacturer as well to get those materials on site so we can get that project started. We also have on the agenda this evening for action a resolution to approve us to go out for a boiler bid. Again, we're going to replace 3 boilers, 3 high efficiency boilers at the intermediate school as well. So we'd like to get that approved this evening so that we can get that project underway and get those replaced in the early fall so that school is ready to go for the winter season.
Thank you. That's very important.
There was
Ms. Hayes?
a question.
Yes, I actually had a question for Ms. Weldon, Superintendent Weldon, sorry. When you mentioned the preschool levels, does that include the Acelero 30 spots? And are we full at Acelero as well?
We are not full,
Okay,
but we have offered seats to everyone we can.
and none of the wait list from the second round of wait list could be pulled. They don't meet those income requirements.
We've offered it to everyone that we can.
Okay.
And either we've offered it to everyone that we can, and this is where we stand right now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll move to the assessment results.
Yes,
Dr. Morgan's going to present.
yes, I'd like to reintroduce Dr. Kalisha Morgan, who, Ms. Conway, if you could put up the presentation, is going to present on the NJGPA results and the advanced placement results. This is, as you know, the state releases scores and we present them. Usually they give the district 60 days from the release of those scores. So this is one presentation that you will see this year. There will be others. And we are going to push the SAT results to the next presentation because there is an additional report that we usually include and it was not out yet. So we felt it was best to hold that to the next presentation. Okay, so you're seeing the NJGPA and the advanced placement results this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, President Gilman, members of the Board of Education, and Superintendent Walton. Thank you for the opportunity to present the NJGPA, which stands for New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment, and the advanced placement results, which will further be AP as I go along. Next slide, please.
No, you just, yeah, you can tell Mary Ann to
Okay,
advance.
next slide.
Conway, please advance. There you go.
Please advance. Please advance. Oh, there you go. So the NJGPA is a statute by the New Jersey Department of Education that requires all students in grade 11 to take an assessment for graduation. It is designed to measure ELA and math, and the report that I will be presenting will tell us exactly where our students are in regards to graduation ready in ELA and math. The ELA component is our 10th grade standards, and the math is Algebra 1 and geometry standards. Please advance. On May 3rd, the New Jersey State Board of Education changed the cut scores. They used to be 750, so now the cut scores are 725. Students who do not meet the minimum required score on each component will have an opportunity to either retake the test, or they can have multiple pathways, which include the ACT, or they can complete a portfolio appeal in order to be eligible for graduation. $251 students took the NJGPA in ELA, and 253 students took the NJGPA in math. So our scale scores, comparison, we're going to compare our spring 22 results to our spring 23 results. And as you can see, we jumped quite a bit. In 22, 21% of our students were graduation ready in the district, and in 23, 73.3% were graduation ready, as compared to the state, 39.4, 80.5. Our students who were not graduation ready was 26.7%. In 22, it was 79%. So as you can see, we did grow quite a bit. Next slide, please. As I stated earlier, our cut scores are now 725. Our ELA scores for the district was 722 in 2022, and they're 755 right now in 23. For the state average, the scores were 736 and 22, and the state average is now 765. So the state average increased, and we also increased here in Ocean Township. Our math scores were 732 for 23, and the state average was 734. So we were right there for the state average. Next slide, please. And here are our subgroups for ELA. The blue side is 2022. The red is 2023. And as you can see, we increased in all of our subgroups. If you look at our L's, which we should call multilingual, they were less than 10 last year, so you will not see a bar for 2022 because there were less than 10 students who took the assessment. And this year, 27% of our L's were graduation ready. Our multilingual students were graduation ready in ELA. Our math subgroups, there were increases across the board. I know you're probably looking at, as I looked at multiple times, what happened with our Asians from 93 to 71. There were 14 students in 2023. 4 were not ready for graduation and 10 were. And there were 15 in 2022 and 1 was ready, 1 was not ready and 14 were. So that brought the percentages down from 93 to 71%. And for our L's, for math, multilingual, for math, no one was graduation ready in 2023. Please advance. So our notable achievements, as I stated, there was an increase in the number of students who were graduation ready. Students who are graduation ready exceeded the state average in math. And in ELA, we recognize that they were close, but there's still work to be done in this area. Please advance. Our intervention strategies, after speaking with our supervisors and seeing what was done last year and how we can improve for this year. So last year, they restructured the intervention courses at the intermediate school and the high school. We looked at the evidence statements, and I did speak with the ELA supervisor that maybe we should start to, well, we will start to look at the evidence statements. That's a report that's given with the data where that comes back. And it tells us exactly where our students fall short on the standards in comparison to students across the district. So we're going to take a deep dive into those evidence statements. We also will ensure that our classwork models the same level of rigor as the NJGPA. Supervisors will continue to hold data meetings with teachers to discuss next steps for implementation of our interventions. And we will continue to develop coaching conversations with students to help them better understand their own strengths and weaknesses, as well as give them strategies for improving their performance. And we will continue to work on changing school culture around test taking and offer additional support to identify students. Our advanced placement results from May 2023. So our advanced placement at OTHS, access and opportunity for all students is our goal. We want all students to be exposed to AP courses before they leave Ocean Township High School. Students can be recommended or request to take AP classes, so we took away those barriers. All students enrolled in the AP courses will take the AP exams, and the test fee is approximately $97 per exam, and the district pays for all of the exams. So our student participation rates, 262 students took AP courses. Grade 12, 112 students, which is 45% of the class, and we're getting there. We really want to get over that 50%, but I think we can do it next year. Grade 11, 84 students, grade 10, 33 students, and grade 9, 33 students. So our AP exam scores percentages, 7% of AP exam scores were a perfect 5. 24% of the AP exam scores were a 4 or a 5. And 53% of the AP exams were a 3, 4, or a 5. The chart shows you our 5-year trend with students from 2019 to 2023 who scored a 3 or better on the AP exams. It took a little dip, but not so much. And here are our subject areas. You can advance, thank you. So our subject scores. To the art, our average was a 3.2. Our biology scores went up. Calculus AB, we had a 2.43. Calculus BC, 3.31. Calculus BC AB, 3.54. And our chemistry, although less than 10, the average was a 3 across the board. Next slide. Computer science A, which took a huge jump, which is good, 3.63. Computer science principles, 2.78. English language, 2.95. English lit, 3.55. Environmental science, 2.63. European history, 2.35. Again, these are the average scores of all the students who took that particular exam. Human geography, 2.38. Italian, 2.0. Macroeconomics, 1.63. Microeconomics, 1.44. Physics 1, 3.31. And physics 2, 2.40. Psychology, 2.86. Spanish, 3.43. Statistics, 3.06. U.S. government and policy, 2.86, and U.S. history, 2.68. Next slide, please. And here are our score distributions across each of the tested subject areas. You will see who scored 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Just take a minute to look at that. Please advance. Here we have psychology, statistics, US history, and physics 1. Please advance. So our AP scholars. I'm sorry, can you go back to the last slide? Thank you. So here are our breakdowns by demographics. Our Black population grew. Our Hispanic population grew. Our multiracial took a dip, and our white students took a little dip. But as we can see, our students of color are growing. And that's what we want to see, that everyone has an opportunity to take AP courses. And we will continue to work on that. I've already had a meeting with the high school principal, the equity coach, as well as the middle school vice principal on how we can ensure that all students have access to AP. It doesn't just start in high school. We want to be sure that we go as low as our intermediate students and possibly looking at our gifted and talented students so that we can start to prepare them for rigorous coursework because we don't want to wait until high school. Next slide, please. And our AP Scholar Summary Report, we have 49 total scholars, 30 AP scholars, 7 AP scholars with honors, and AP scholars with distinction, which is an increase from last year. We had 7 AP scholars with distinction, now we have 12. And we had 8 last year for honors, we have 7 and 33 AP scholars. Last year, we have 30. So we really would like to see them all grow, but we are very proud of our students who achieve AP scholars with distinction because that grew from last year. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. Mr. Weinstein has a question.
Thanks for the information. And I know you inherited most of this, right? So I guess the one thing that's missing from me, and I was thinking about all the times we see some of these, this data, is there a way for us to kind of forecast a goal that we have in each one of these categories? So our standard right now is we compare against the state, how we're doing. And I was wondering if there was a method that we could adopt, which is forecasting where we want to be in some of these results. So like if you notice some of the AP scores on like the economics is very low. Do we want to try to start forecasting and pushing ourselves to be able to achieve what we hope to achieve, as opposed to just saying, yeah, we want to get everybody everybody a 5, or we want everybody in that area. I know that's not reasonable, but maybe we could have a goal that we can have for some of these, because that's much more important to me, is that we're trying to achieve a goal, and how do we go against that goal, and what are we going to do to get to that goal? That would be more important to me.
Right. So we absolutely review the results and then diagnose what the problem is and what we need to do about it. So sometimes it's teacher preparation, teacher professional development. Sometimes we send teachers to week-long AP prep coursework. Sometimes we talk to the teacher about and find that really the teacher is not comfortable teaching the class and we make a change. Sometimes it has to do with that. As Dr. Morgan said in the beginning, the other thing we really do focus in on is preparing more students to take the classes rather than focusing so much on the score, although that is important and it would be wonderful to come here and present to the public that everyone earned a 5. It is not our priority. And I think I have said that before, and I believe Dr. Morgan holds that same philosophy as I do about the experience of a student in the class is far more important in their success post high school than the actual score. But certainly, then you're speaking specifically about AP, because I do want to say about NJ GPA or other assessments like NJ SLA, we do a lot more than just hope for a better score. We diagnose that student, and that's where interventions come in. That's where we may enroll a student in a program with a cycle of intervention from an ELA teacher or a math teacher. We may look at a skill gap that student has and show that to their classroom teachers. We show all the classroom teachers. What are the standards that these students have not acquired yet? They may need additional help either from a staff member or from a program like IXL. We use other opening benchmark data to put together a whole picture and not just one piece of data. So if you're talking about all of that, I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Yeah, I guess when you were looking at the numbers, right, and you're kind of going from one year to the next and you're comparing the district to the state. And then you're also looking at the trends for each one of these AP classes and how we're doing over time. So when I look at the number, I'm not sure if you're happy with it because you achieved the goal that you wanted to achieve, or you're not happy with it because you wanted to achieve a higher goal. So the goal to me is just as important of whether you're achieving it or not, because the goal is basically you're saying to yourself and the team that we have this amount, there's this, how do we get from here to here? But we can't get from here to here, so we're going to really try to organize and align ourselves to get to here, and that's what we're going to strive to do, and that is our achievement goal. So that's what I'm just trying to figure out if that's even possible to do. I'm just telling you when I'm looking at when I'm just saying from my own point of view, when I'm looking at the numbers, I'm not sure if you think that we exceeded what we were able to do, like got below what we were able to do, or what we were able to do is what we're able to do, like that. And so to me, I always like to figure out how we have goals, and if it was possible to get goals, it might help us, kind of, figure out how well we're achieving and getting to those
And
measurements.
Mr. Weinstein, it sounds like you're proposing a new board goal. And I am still working on those and had hoped to present them either the next meeting, because I'm still getting people submitting things. And if you'd like to make that a board goal and not specific to, okay, we want X number of people to achieve a 5, but just to continue interventions, continue enrichment programs in order to increase AP scores, it can be a generic goal like that.
Well, I'm not sure if it rises to, if you want to have a discussion about it, I'm okay about it. I mean, I think board goals are things that we're supposed to be able to drive ourselves. So I'm not sure how that falls, but it's more that, Ms. Weldon, the thing that you were kind of saying was that we're interested in the whole student, right? And I'm interested in the whole student too. I'm also interested in how do we create goals to see if we're meeting the goals.
Right, there's layers to the goal, right?
Yes, right.
There's overall district goals, then there are grade level goals or course goals. As Dr. Morgan mentioned, we look at evidence summaries, we look at standards, then we evaluate our curriculum to say, well, if a majority of our students did not really grasp that standard, what about our curriculum is not teaching that well? What about our professional development to our staff has not helped them to implement that instructional strategy well? So we look at it and then we drill that right down to this individual student goal and try and make a difference in an individual student's outcomes, just as much as we look at a department goal to increase there. So we do have those goals. I don't know if that answers your question or not, or if you want more conversation around
So like if I go to the comp sci, it was a big jump from 2.43 to 3.63, right? I'm not sure if there was a concerted effort to figure out how to get that done, or if somebody said to themselves, our goal is to figure out how to get to that level. In some of the other ones where it's very flat, I'm not sure if we're trying to figure out, is there a goal to really take that class and rise it, or if there's not a goal to do that?
So there's always a goal. So a good example of what you're bringing up is last year we looked at some of the results and we're not happy with certain courses. And we did certain things with certain teachers and certain supports. And then we were very happy with those results. But as you said, there are other areas where we tried some of those same things and did not see the results. So we have to figure out why. What we tried in one situation worked, and trying that same thing in another situation, it didn't work as well as we had hoped. So the principal, the supervisor, the teacher, Dr. Morgan, myself, we're all looking for what else can we try here, or do we need to sort of start over and come up with a new plan for that course? But with the AP, we're not really comparing ourselves so much to the state. We're really comparing ourselves to ourselves. Year to year progress there.
Right, so just to put a finer point on it, is if we were sitting here and we were saying that our goal for the goals for the different classes were raised, right? That would help me kind of understand how were we achieving what our expectation was. That's really all I was asking about. And I'm not saying this is not a pop quiz on that you should figure out how to do it or not figure out how to do it. It's more just a viewpoint, which it's hard to gauge if we're reaching the success levels that we should be happy with or not happy with. Right? We're just getting the data and it's out there, but I'm not sure how from a methodology standpoint, we feel great about it or good about it or not good about it. So that's my only comment. So you can do what you want. We have another discussion about it later on.
Presentation here, but I'm never satisfied. I've said that many times. I'm never happy, with.
And I also want to
always
point out
areas for us to improve.
that we, instead of just setting a goal, looking at growth. Did we have, more students achieve a 3 or 4 or a 5 than we did last year? We may not get to that 3, but did we have more students increase? Like you just pointed out, AP Computer Science, which is what I circled also, as well as chemistry. I know when Mr. Sullivan was presenting during the admin retreat, he was just excited because of whatever he did last year, it worked, and he pointed that out. So we just need to look at what, like Ms. Superintendent Weldon said, what's happening in the classroom, what's happening with the teachers, how are the supervisors supporting? So all of that comes into play before we just say, okay, we're not achieving. Did we do what we were supposed to do? And if not, we need to revamp that.
Thank you, Dr. Morgan. Dr. Beal, you had a question.
Yes, Dr. Morgan, and apologies, someone's going to get my back just
That's
because
okay.
of where I'm sitting, but thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that, and kudos to the students who took the classes and the test because it is a grueling process. But you mentioned you were having conversations about basically the pathway.
Yes.
And in addition to AP, there are other levels, obviously the honors level, advanced level.
Yes.
Are those conversations also taking place because that is a pathway for the students?
Yes, they
and
are.
also, as we know, word of mouth
Yes.
is a way for the students also. So
Yes.
is that taking place as well?
Yes, in that same meeting, we talked about honors leading to AP, how we can get more students involved in AP, doing more outreach. I think I sent the article last week about providing mentors to students who are taking AP courses, just ways so that students don't think that they can't do it. We want to try to encourage them to do it.
Very good, thank you. Ms. McGovern.
I just have a question on the slide that talks about the grade levels and how many students took the exams. I know it's not reflected here, and the question is there, I know multiple, like some students take multiple APs.
Yes.
So when we say like grade 12 is 112 students, is that 112 students, but some of them could be taking multiple, or is that 100?
112 students who were exposed to AP, it could have been more if they were multiple.
Okay.
It was just 100.
So I guess at some point, and I don't know if the rest of if there's 5 people here or 4 other people that would like to know that, I would just be interested to know. I mean, I know there's only one course freshman year that's offered, so obviously there's only in one course, but it'd be interesting to know with the growth, with what the goal has been, which has been I've been here 9 years. I feel like it's always been the goal to get exposed, as you're saying, more students to AP courses. I think it'd be interesting to know what the growth has been on also how many students have taken multiple AP courses. And again, that's a statistic if there's a majority of the board, but I would like to know that. If not, I'm okay with not knowing it. Because I think that we have grown, I know, transparency, as I said, I have a 9th grader, and I feel like I've learned so much more about AP having a student in the high school. And we also have more AP offerings that have started this coming school year and things like that. So it'd be interested to know, the growth, not just the growth for, equity, because I think that would be a nice number. Maybe, well, you presented that number, but it'd be nice to know with the course offerings and stuff, how many more are going. And then the other thing I just wanted to, just a comment. I was telling Mrs. Parlamas that I had a conversation with a neighbor of mine who just finished grad school, who took AP psychology at our high school when he was here. And he just told me how our current teacher, who is still here, changed his life to have him be a psychology major and has gone to grad school and done all of that. And not someone who earned the credit from the school. So I think that the goal that we have always set in this district of exposing students so that they were ready for the course when they got to college, as much as I love this, you know, I would love to see better scores. I also love things like that of knowing that we have definitely prepared a student and, you know, and also giving them information that they maybe would have never had, to be able to have a life in that, you know, area. So I just think that's another nice thing for the board to just know. So thank you, Ms. Welsh.
Thank you for that comment. Ms. Hayes.
Dr. Morgan, thank you so much for this extensive presentation. And we are about 2.5 months earlier than we did it last year. So I appreciate the expediency in getting this in August rather than.
I must say that wasn't me though.
No, I know. I'm super appreciative of it. I think it's awesome. So thank you, Superintendent Weldon, for pushing for early results. I have several questions, as I always do when we come to this part of the year when we go over exams. Do we know the percentage of AP exam scores that were a 3? I know you did the 5 and the 4, and then you have a 3 and a 5. Most schools, I'm hoping most people know that, unless you do go to some state schools, do not even accept a 3.
Right.
So, while the 3 to 5, I think, is an important percentage, I'm curious if that 3 to 5 percentage is heavily 3s, because I understand this, this striving for increased exposure, but I do hope that more and more students actually get the free credits out of it, get the advanced placement in college, get, you know, reap the benefits of actually scoring 4 and 5s, kind of maybe perhaps what Jeff was alluding to, of some sort of a goal perhaps of higher scores. Do we happen to know that?
There were 27% of our students who scored a 3.
And that was the largest percentage, correct?
Yes, the next one was 24.
Okay. A few other questions. When we look at potentially either getting tutoring, high impact tutoring grants, or even finding the money for it in ourselves, and maybe this is for Superintendent Weldon, do we think that we can use high impact tutoring funds to affect math proficiency, for example, or SAT prep, or any type of exposure to increase these assessments?
You're speaking of the current grant opportunity available to districts?
Not just that grant, but I mean, I guess, yes, because that would be what, potentially up to $500,000 grant. Is that something that we could use?
The grant allows districts to apply for $768,000, I believe, in total, but it is to target 3rd and 4th graders. So 3rd and 4th grade math achievement, yes, but not AP.
Okay. Okay. Do we happen to know also $47,000 we spent this year on these AP exams? Back when I took AP exams, the parents had to pay for it themselves. So I bring this up every year. Do we know what we spent on it last year? 484 tests, 262 kids. Are we at our pre-COVID levels, or have we surpassed that? Do you know?
Our students who took the test in 2020, we're trending upwards in the number of exams. So for 2020, it was 495. Because that was right when COVID hit. 21, it did go down to 455, and then 2022 was 413. So we're moving back.
Going up. Okay, that's good to know.
As well as the number of students who took the exams. I know you probably didn't ask this, but I have it available. So there were 283 students in 2020. Again, we were already in school when COVID hit. We did go down to 254 in 2021, 239 in 2022. So now it's 262. So we are trending back up.
Okay. And I think this is one of my last questions. While we went over the subgroup scores and proficiency for NJGPA, we don't have a slide on how subgroups performed on the AP exams. Is that something we are looking into to make sure we're doing culturally responsive teaching in these classes, if there's equity in who takes all the science classes, who takes all the math classes, who takes all the performing arts APs. Are we looking at those numbers as well?
That's something that we can do.
Any other questions for Dr. Morgan?
I'm sorry, I have one more question. I brought this up last year. Is there a way to find out, perhaps surveying, students that have graduated on the successful application of AP scores from our students that have graduated? For the students that have gotten 4s and 5s over the years, are there success stories that we can promote? Do all these students know that, yes, we want you to take the classes, and the more students that can get it, the better, but are we truly promoting as best we can the incredible monetary savings, for example, and advancing in your major, for example, if students do great? Like, do we have any sort of a pulse point on the number of 380 students last year? I don't know how many were seniors. Did anybody get any college credit?
I don't have that information with me. I can ask.
I think that would be a selling point of me as a parent. I mean, to try to gauge more student involvement. I don't know.
Just
Mr. Weinstein?
Yeah, just anecdotally, I think one of the challenges with AP courses and how they translate into college credit is, like, I know my daughters both did well in their AP classes, but in their major, they were advised by their professors that they should take the actual class at the college level and kind of forfeit that. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the savings of the dollars is the motivational part. I'm not sure if that's what do you know, Ms. Weldon, if that's
I think you're right that is the case for some. I think in those situations, sometimes the students then are allowed to transfer in elective credit, but then take the coursework in their major. I think in some cases they can advance, like start second semester of their freshman year or sophomore year. And so then it is a cost savings. Other times, and we hear this most often, that a transcript that shows AP coursework is most marketable in the application process.
Right.
But I can see if we have any data to share, any easily gathered data on seniors reporting. One of the things that we did put in place last year for a number of reasons is an exit collection of personal emails from our graduates so that we could ask questions like this going forward. So although we did not ask that question, they're enrolled now. I mean, sometimes, it might be better to ask at the end of their freshman year at college, if it applied, if it transferred, if it worked out well for them, if they felt well prepared, because that is often anecdotally what we hear is that narrative situations where students come back and say, the English class I took at Ocean Township High School, I could reuse the papers in college because they were of that caliber and they were of that expectation in high school that I needed to present in college. Now that's anecdotal. It comes from one student here or there. I would never make assumptions that all students felt that way based on that one personal story. But I can look to see, or Dr. Morgan can speak with Mr. DePasquale, see what the guidance office has collected in terms of, did students get credit and or able to advance in coursework because of their performance on their AP exams, which again, they don't get until July. So they wouldn't know when they left us, and we would not have been able to collect it from them before they left us. So it really is a now conversation for them as they are going off to their freshman year of school.
And if I understand, and I've been reading the trends correctly, more and more colleges are not allowing students to advance. They'll look at the transcript and perhaps give consideration, but it's a loss for them if they're to move students to second semester freshman year or first semester sophomore year. And more schools, which we have no control over, are not accepting them for college credit, unfortunately. Yes, Ms. McGovern.
There's also if we're going to find out the data about the AP, it might be interesting to know as well some of the courses that are in the Spartan schools that are not AP that do get college credit that can be transferred as well, you know, like some of
It's awesome.
the those
The
ones.
business or?
The dual enrollment program,
Yeah.
which we have many, and they're not just in the Spartan schools, they're in many other
Right.
courses throughout the high school.
Oh,
Where students earn college credit, not just through AP. So our initiative to expose more students to college level coursework in high school, it's absolutely moving forward, right? We're moving in a positive direction there. And even some of our enrollment numbers are based off of declining enrollment in total population, but an increase in number of AP exams that we're taking. So we can drill that down a little bit more based on some of these requests, if that is what you'd like us to do.
if that's what the board would like. Well, we can discuss that further. Thank you, Dr. Morgan, for your presentation.
Thank you.
It was very informative. And we already heard our school business administrators report. Thank you, Mr. Hastings. We now move to, at this point in the meeting, conduct the first of two public comment sessions. The first session will be open for public comment on agenda items only. The second session will be at the end of the meeting and can be on any topic. Would anyone from the public in the auditorium here like to comment on any agenda item at this time? Yes, sir, if you'll come to the mic. Give us your name.
Hello, David Stoniker.
Thank you, Mr. Stoniker, for signing that. No reason to forget that it's up there.
I have a question regarding voting on the school curriculum, because I see there's a docket number coming up later in the meeting. So here's my question. With the upcoming school district curriculum that the board members will be voting on, would the board consider on voting, excuse me, on each curriculum subject as a separate vote docket number instead of having the entire district curriculum voted together? That way, if a board member doesn't agree with a certain subject matter, that member could vote no on that subject and not the entire district curriculum.
I believe these are new curriculums
Yes.
that have been updated, like the esports curriculum and robotics.
Yeah,
So you're asking if they can be voted on separately, like esports?
yeah, and even
Yes.
if you roll that into, eventually, I guess in the next coming weeks, you're gonna be voting on the curriculum for the school district this coming year, right?
Did we?
Or is that
Done it.
voted on already?
Right, that's,
Correct.
well, each curriculum that's up now, the course has already previously been approved by the Board of Ed to be a course. So
Yes.
then, and then the approval to do the curriculum work has been approved already, and the person hired to do the work has been approved. And so now this is just the approval of the work that has been done, that has had all these prior approvals. And then I believe at our reorganization meeting, I was not the superintendent at the time, but that part of the motion there is to approve all existing curriculum.
I got you.
So that's done
So
in
that's what-
January.
What's that? I'm
That's
sorry.
done in January.
Okay.
So these are as
Oh, so this is just new upcoming this year.
These are either documents that needed to be updated and or revised,
Okay.
or they were brand new courses that the
Yes.
board previously approved them as new courses,
Okay,
and then approved us to do the curriculum work
gotcha.
around these classes.
Okay, well, even with that said, like it's all in docket 10.3 for tonight. Let's say if somebody didn't agree with the esports program. Now, they would have to vote no on that whole new
No.
curriculum, correct? If they,
I
you know,
think we could,
Should they recuse from
Can we?
a particular? No, I think it has to be.
I mean,
Mr. Taylor, I'll defer to you.
yeah, I don't,
sure. I mean, generally speaking, I would say this is not Congress. So it doesn't have to be that complicated, but if there's a multi-part agenda item, nothing stops a board member from voting yes to items 1 through 3, abstain from 4 and 5, and yes to the rest, to give you an example, or no to 4 and 5 and yes to the rest. That happens frequently. And it's not, there's nothing prohibiting that in this instance.
yes, no,
Does
but
that answer your question, Mr. Stoniker?
somewhat.
Somewhat.
I'm sorry.
What you asked can be done.
Yes,
All right.
yes, that's what I'm saying.
Should go back to it.
Gotcha.
Let's let him finish
Okay.
the answer there.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like? Continue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public in the auditorium? Yes. Sylvia, would you go to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Sylvia, 200 Lincoln Drive. Is this on?
It doesn't.
It's on.
This broadcast.
It's on for the.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm like all over, I was trying to take furious notes. Wanted to just, ask maybe a couple questions about, Dr. Morgan's presentation. Good job. Hitting the ground running. Particularly, I like what you said about, it's the growth that's more important. And it is like a couple of digits here versus a couple of digits there isn't really the big thing in my opinion. It's the big numbers. Like I'm looking at the graphs and there were some really interesting things in the subgroups in your 504s. The math scores skyrocketed. They went from 31 to 77. Like that's, I don't know what to put in the water. Like that's really impressive. English in the 504s also 13 to 85. Like that, I don't know what makes that big of a jump. Initially, I was looking at was it the cut score? The cut score differences aren't until next year. That's the 2024 graduation class. Right?
That was this
Okay.
class that took
Right.
the test.
Okay,
The
that's-
cut score did change.
Okay,
And
so,
that is
all
some.
right, so
that's
that's
gonna
what I was
pull
kind of
this out.
hoping it wasn't.
No, some of that is
is-
from the cut scores.
All right, so I guess this would be the 1 year that we would see like that enormity in the differences. And then after that, you'd be comparing this year to the next year, so it wouldn't be like that big giant change in the bar graph. The things that concern me more, I guess, then would be the declines with a different cut score, seeing a decline in numbers. And I'm sure, like Kelly, I've known you forever. I know that you've got a plan for every single thing for kids that are just being born. Like I know that, so I'm not uncomfortable with that at all. I think that my concern was, and even in the state's eminent wisdom, and I say that as a joke, and I understand that last time when I spoke here, there was an issue. Maybe a board member or two was concerned that I didn't out of the gate say that I'm on the state board, because I'm not here as a state board member. I'm a resident here. And I don't tell them I liked being on this board. Those years better, actually. I was just concerned that maybe the cut score were going to make an artificial inflation, but the bigger problem would be lower cut scores having and still having a bigger decrease. I guess that's my concern, and not overly concerned because I know that you're going to do great things with it. I think I know I had something else, and if I don't find that note, Dr. Morgan, I'm gonna I'll email you the question if that's all right. It was a good note. It was a good note, but I had something that I wanted to ask you about and what it is that you might be able to do to apply to continue that. But excellent presentation. I appreciate that. Mrs. Gilman, I don't know if now is this is agenda items, but since your presentation about the cost was in the agenda, do you want to hear comments about that
Yes, you
now?
can comment on that now.
Okay, and again, I apologize for being kind of all over the place, but I was taking notes as everybody was speaking. First, I really do appreciate so much the transparency of not making anybody ask, because what if nobody asks? Then it's not out there. So I really do, I think that's proactive of the board. I appreciate that. I would request that if it's possible at all, that the board just naturally do that while you go through the process so that we can all be kept up to date with what the costs are. Because sometimes we won't be here, but I always watch it. It's just not live maybe when I'm watching it, so I can't ask at that time. So if that's something that the board would consider, is just to have that as a natural part of the presentation. And I say that, and I wasn't planning on it, but one of our board members in their comments said that this presentation of the numbers was smoke and mirrors, but I felt as though it was transparent. And that's actually one of the board members that I always credit with being a proponent of transparency. So that was a little confusing to me. I think that, and then she also rattled off a number of other years and the legal fees that were spent in other years, but this wouldn't have been a budget item in other years. Those things that you spend on attorneys, and no offense, I hear you're great, like everybody's loving you. But the fees that you spend on attorneys for special ed or for labor or whatever it is, that is all it's budget, and it's for the betterment of the students. This is not that. This isn't that at all. This is also just the beginning. Those numbers, this is the first presentation of invoice. Like that's going to skyrocket. And I just, not only is it not for the betterment of the students, but it takes away, or it just costs the rest of us more. So I do appreciate that you did that presentation, and I appreciate Mr. McCarthy keeping things on track. That's always it's easy to go off track. So I do appreciate. Thank you very much for doing that. I guess really, that's probably everything that I have to say. Concerned about the included in comments about that were a disagreement about a staff member's salary. Like these are things that are they're budgeted for. These fees, this expense. This is, and I'm sorry, I'm not like the smartest person in the room, so I'll use words like ridiculous. I think it's a ridiculous expense of money for something that maybe could be contained in conversations. It's punitive. So anyway, thank you for doing it, and I really do hope that you'll continue to do that.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the auditorium care to go to the microphone? Ms. Conway, is there anyone in the queue who would like to make a public comment at this time?
Yes, there is. There is one commenter, Madam President, Batya van Nostrand. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see, did you report the AP Music Theory grades for this past year?
I didn't hear the question. Batya, can you repeat the question about AP again?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, the AP Music Theory, did you report that? I might have missed it.
If some subjects had less than 10 students, we did not report that. The mean score was not there, though. The mean score should be there.
Okay, I might have missed it.
Okay, we can take a look. We report the mean score, but we don't break out that 5 through 1 because there's less than 10 students.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome. Anyone else, Ms. Conway, care to comment?
No, President Gilman, there is no more commenters.
Thank you very much. Then
Actually, there is. Yes, Patrick Glynn.
yes, Mr. Glynn, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Hello, this is Mrs. Flynn. I just have a comment on the same thing that Sylvia was commenting on, that we have this founded legal expense that I wish that our board would be more, deal with these issues internally and not have to deal with these things in this basically unfounded, unseemly way. I know Irene Gilman for decades, and I really feel that, this, knowing her, that this could have all been handled without dealing with an ethics complaint, that this should have just been dealt with internally. We have this legal expense could have been used by our community, our students, not for a board business. Personal agendas should not be part of a board issue. This is a community issue. Everything on the board deals with our school community and what could best be handled for our school community. And I know that I've seen Irene's commitment to our community for decades. I know that Mr. Weinstein has been committed to this community for decades. And that is their primary agenda for their whole life, is just what can I do to help this community? I've seen that. So I would like to say that that is, extremely sad that this is what we have come to.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else, Ms. Conway, in the queue?
No, Madam President, there are no further commenters.
Okay, then we will move to our action items. The approval of minutes, Mr. McCarthy.
Move to approve items 7.1 and 7.2.
Second.
Minutes.
Would it help if we raised our hands while we second? Our voices matter.
Any questions or comments?
Okay.
This is for item 7.1, 7.2. Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes, this is a different order though, right? Why are we going out of a different order?
Yes or no?
Well, there's been a motion probably moved and seconded, so.
Yes.
Your past discussion, we're going to go into it. She said yes.
Mrs. Parliamus,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilman,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move to personnel, which was already discussed.
Yes, I'd like to
Mr.
make,
Parlamas,
I'd like to make a motion to move items 8.1 through 8.13. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr.
I
Hastings.
didn't-
I do have a quick question. It's not about any,
Ms. Hayes.
on the personnel matter, there is a volunteer library aide. Could somebody just explain what that does? And if somebody wants to be a volunteer library aide at one of the schools, I don't know if it's just elementary schools. I think that's awesome. How would one become one? Because even when I was PTA president, I didn't know we did that. So how does that happen? How does one get excited to apply for that or make it happen?
I can find out from Mrs. LaPuznik how she selected this person and get back to you on that.
Oh, it's like a school by school. Okay, awesome. That's great.
You can continue.
Thank you. This is for items 8.1 through 8.13. Mrs. Parlamas,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilman,
Yes.
motion's carried.
Financial management and resource services. Ms. Hayes.
I am pulling that up. 9.1, move to approve the purchase of paving services from Garden State Paving Solutions in the amount of $59,995 as pricing was obtained via the ESCNJ co-op contract, etc., for the attached quote, per the attached quote, rather.
9.1 through 9.4.
And
Oh, I thought I have to read them since they weren't all discussions. Okay. 9.2, use of facilities, apologies. Move to approve the use of facilities in accordance with the attached memo dated August 15th, 2023. 9.3, move to approve the alternate method of compliance pursuant to NJAC, et cetera, for the annual toilet facilities for the early intervention pre-K and kindergarten classrooms for this coming school year in accordance with the attached form. 9.4, move to approve advertising for bids for the replacement of boilers at the intermediate school. And 9.5. Oh, wait, that's a discussion. So I'll wait on that. So
Second, 9.1 through 9.4.
9.1 through 4.
Thank you, Ms. McGovern.
I do.
Questions, comments?
Yes, I have a question.
yes, Ms. Carlisle.
Mr. Hastings, normally, and I don't know if anyone can answer this, but we usually do the concrete work over the summer. And being that it's a school, what's the reason for the delay that it's being done? Like, during the school year, yeah.
Right. So the concrete is going to be done. We're doing it this week. So both the paving and the concrete work will be done tomorrow, I believe.
Right.
The last job was the asphalt over at the intermediate school. I'd have to speak with our buildings and grounds folks to find out why it was delayed. Could have been the contractor's availability. Could have been other projects that may have interfered. We have some camps going on at the schools with kids coming back and forth. So we may have chosen not to do it at that point in time. So this is sort of a quiet time where there's no students or faculty at the building. So it might be easier to get it done at this point, but I can follow up with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. So did you make a motion?
Yes, we have,
Ms. McGovern?
On 9.3, is this something we've done before where we've had to, sorry.
The state comes in to assess for our preschools and they check out the toilet facilities.
No, I understand that, but we've had to put, like, this form is something we filled out every year for this?
yes.
Or we just have had preschool.
Anytime we're using a waiver for the, right.
Correct. So when there's a bathroom that's not in the classroom for preschool,
Okay.
we need a waiver. So the county came out this week or the end of last week, I forgot, and inspected both locations, one that was approved last month and this one that was approved this month. And she's approved those.
And then my last question about the boilers is,
Yes.
so I assume we're hoping, like, when are these bids coming back and do we expect the work to be done before the winter when we need the boilers the most?
We expect the bids to come back the day of our next board meeting.
Okay.
We'll vet those, make sure they're in compliance. We'll determine the lowest bidder. And then make a proposal for award. The architect has indicated to us that they would expect installation to be completed by the end of October, early November.
Perfect. Thank you.
Before it gets cold. That's hope, right? Ms. Hayes?
I also have a question about the boilers. I did not see any documents in there, so apologies if I'm missing something. I thought with the $2 million of the ESSER funds that we spent on the HVAC at the middle school, that included some of the new boiler work. Did it not? So that's question number one. Since we spent all that money on, like, the curtain wall, like you were talking about HVAC, I thought that would have included boilers. Number two, do we have anything in our RFP that requests like we would for minority owned businesses, veteran owned businesses? Do we have anything like that? And do we also have any kind of green parameters to try to get quotes from companies to install more energy efficient and green boilers than normal?
I'm not aware right now of the HVAC projects that you've done over the previous months and utilizing your ESSER funds. However, we have 3 boilers there. They're about 20 years old. 2 of them are inoperable. So I can follow up with you tomorrow if you like and provide that information.
That would be
in terms
great.
of minority owned businesses or green, those sorts of things. Those are included as encouragements within the bid specifications and encouraged to apply. And the boilers that we're looking at are high efficiency boilers. So.
Okay. I'm sorry. Follow-up question to that would be, if we were to select high efficiency, higher rated sustainable boilers, would that also be more attractive for any grants, any energy grants in the future that we were to apply to? If that's
Well, it would be a timing issue in that we want to secure those grants and apply for those in anticipation of replacing different boilers. So maybe at one of the other locations, we can make that effort and make future improvements utilizing those grant funds, and we'll certainly look at that so that it doesn't have to come directly out of our budget, going forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hastings.
Can we now vote on the items that have they been put forward? Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. This is for 9-1 through 9-4. Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. McGovern,
Yes.
Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Paralamas.
Yes.
Mrs. Tellerico.
Not here.
Thank you. Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
Ms. Gilman.
Yes,
Motion's carried.
thank you. We move to instruction, education. and-
Actually, we have 9.5.
About the other two for discussion.
9.5 and 9.6, Board of Education will discuss shared service agreement with CJ Pride and the cooperative agreement and shared service with Buy Board, Keystone Purchasing, and National Commodities. Do we have discussion?
This is just a discussion.
Does the participation in Central Jersey Pride require any contribution of funding from the district?
It does.
Yeah.
There's a $2,000 fee for us to be part of that consortium. Gives us access to a network of districts and support to attract more diverse candidates to our district. It was something that I believe the board discussed last year, and as a board goal, Dr. Stefanowicz had asked me to look into it and to budget for that for this coming school year, which we did put into the budget and are now preparing to sign on with them for this school year.
Sounds good. Thank you. 9.6,
Well, just,
yes, Mr. Weinstein.
so, do you have any anticipation what the results of being part of this are gonna be?
I don't yet. I'm just getting onboarded into the network. So I don't have any anticipation yet of an outcome there.
Okay, and I'm assuming that you are supportive of this program, for us to be part of it.
When he asked me to look into it, I saw that it was a board goal and that was an initiative that was important to this board. And I know of other districts that participate in it as well. And, I don't really have an opinion either way. Right now, I'm hopeful that it will be fruitful for us. If it's not, then I would not support spending money towards it again in the future.
Okay, cool, great, thank you.
This is an annual renewal.
It is lesser renewal fee.
Yes.
I just want to point out to the board that I just need more information on this organization because just a cursory review of their website was not very impressive to me. I don't think it provided a whole lot of information. I would ask that maybe other board members review that before we start to vote on it and potentially point out where I'm wrong. And I would like to just have more information on the benefits added to us and maybe statistics on where they've been successful in the past if the board is open to that. And specifically, one thing that struck out to me that I'm hopeful is maybe one of the smaller portions of their work, but I saw only $2,000 in total funds put forward for scholarships. I just want that answered. Is that only because they're giving out very small portions of scholarships, or is that only because they have limited funding because they're a new organization? Is there a reason for that? Those sorts of things, and who specifically are those scholarships tied to? Because that threw me off. Is there a organization that I understand is supposed to help us with staffing? I didn't understand where their scholarships tied from, and I could not find an About Us page. But maybe I missed some things.
Interesting. Well, we've got time to look into it before we vote on it, since it is up for discussion.
We're not voting on it tonight.
Maybe we
That's why I said I asked the board.
Yeah, so, Ms. Weldon, did you feel like you did you do some background on that, or?
I did. I looked into it. I knew other districts that had used it and that it did offer support to attract more diverse candidates. And that's what I was asked to look into if it did that. So again, I don't have an expectation for how well it will do that, or if we need it, we need that relationship in order to attract more diverse applicants to our districts. But I'll do a little bit more research and provide you with a little bit more information.
Good.
Make your decision.
At our next meeting.
Great, thanks.
Very good, thank you.
I have a comment.
Ms. Hayes?
I think in order, think of how to phrase this. I think in order to meet some of our diversity hiring goals, partnering with an organization like CJ Pride is a smart move. It's a relatively new organization. I don't know much more than perhaps you've read as well, John. But the fact that it also allows us to kind of host our own website for applicants is a value add to the $2,000. And I think we would be remiss, this is my commentary, in not doing this when our recruiting goals, from what I have gathered from this board over the last 3 years, have not met the diversity we would like to see. So I fully support this.
Thank you for your comments. Instruction, education, and student activities, Dr. Beal.
Move to approve 10.1 through 10.3.
Second. All right, John.
Oh, so I can do that next time.
Questions or comments?
I have some questions on.
Ms. Hayes.
I have some questions on the robotics. I actually do not want, that's 10.3, correct? So I'm okay in asking this. I do not know much about robotics, but I spoke to a robotics teacher. So some of the questions, and this do not need to be answered now, so perhaps you can get back to me or us or whatever. The 2-for-1 robotic kits per kid seems ambitious for this robotics high school teacher in Middlesex County. So if he thinks it's ambitious, I almost kind of like it. But we are attempting to give 1 kit per 2 kids. I also have a couple of questions on the specific version of Vex robots and all that kind of stuff. It's robotic speak that I know nothing about. So actually, you know what? Maybe it'd be better if I just pass along the questions. Superintendent Weldon, would that be easy? I was a little bit concerned about the special needs population and perhaps the ELL population access to the robotics program. The curriculum didn't seem to have the best resources for that subsect of our population, but I applaud us doing it, and the esports as well is amazing. So I'll just send you those questions.
Thank you.
That.
Any other questions? 10.1 to 10.3? Yes. Mr.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I read the esports and the robotic thing. I thought it was very well written. I thought it was to the right level of detail for this kind of level. So I just kind of commend you for putting those together.
Dr. Morgan and the supervisors and the teachers who wrote it deserve that credit. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate the work they've
First
done.
pass, I thought it
Yeah.
went very well. Yeah.
It was a very good curriculums that they developed.
And can I just say that
Awesome.
any course that we offer in this district, high school, middle school, new, old, our special ed population is available to, and we do make accommodations for it, correct?
We do.
Yes, thank you for that comment as well. We do make accommodations for all of our students. If there are no other questions, then we'll take the vote.
Thank you. This is for items 10.1 to 10.3. Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. McGovern,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Mrs. Paralamas.
Yes.
Ms. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Discussion regarding 10.4 through 10.7.
Any comments, questions?
Just on 10.5, were we supposed to discuss that upstairs or no? Non-resident students, or are they just, Are they new to our district? I'm sorry, Ms. Gilman.
Yes, these are additional resident students. Non-resident students, sorry,
So they're tuition students.
tuition students,
Okay.
yep, parent, private pay.
Right. That's great.
New
Thank you.
district, new students to our district, paying
Yeah.
tuition to come to our
Which is great.
schools. That's it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yes, Ms. McCarthy.
Am I the only one who might be missing like an attachment or might not be loading for me on 10.6? I don't have anything there.
Yeah, there are PD items. Mr. Cologne is on there and
This is just, it's
Connolly.
probably just my connection.
Are you signed in?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
I was gonna say earlier, it was glitching out saying the page you're looking for is not available, and then it would come back. Right now, I can see an August 8th memo, but
Right.
earlier it was going out and
Wow.
try just closing out and
Okay.
going back in.
And of course, our tech person.
Do you want to borrow it for a second?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. McCarthy. No further
I suppose you have
discussion
people that
on
discuss.
those items. Okay, we'll move to policies.
Just a point of inquiry before I move anything
Yes.
forward. Are we not, and this is directed towards the administration, we're not voting on. Sorry, my page reloaded on 11.2, specifically the school threat assessment policy today.
No, this is the,
Second presentation.
oh, we are,
Yes.
sorry, yes,
But but we aren't voting on sick leave today.
because it's new today.
It's new today. Okay.
So that's the.
But so I should be moving to approve. So the reason I'm confused is in 11.2, we're presenting school threat assessment and sick leave policies. So. I
Yes, we
can't,
should be approving both 11.1 and 11.2.
we can't approve 11.1 pro policy because of the fact that this is the first presentation of the sick
Right.
leave
That's why
policy.
we're gonna do it at the 29th.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
So not approving it.
So I move to approve item 11.1. I move to approve only the school threat assessment policies in item 11.2. And I present the sick leave policies. Do I have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments? This is 11.1 and 11.2, this
School threat assessment.
thank you.
Right, we reviewed
Only.
those already.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. McGovern,
Yes.
Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mrs. Paralamas.
Yes.
Mrs. Talarico,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Gilman,
Yes.
motion's carried.
And then I just would like to open the floor up for discussion for any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the abolishment of the sick leave policy and the presentation of the new sick leave policy.
So this is something I know that the School Boards Association has discussed previously, and I know it's going to maybe provide a hardship for some districts that the sick leave policy has been expanded to the point that it has. It used to be a little bit more restrictive of what the administration could ask for as far as absence for 3 days, and then a doctor's note would be required. I think it would be important for us to read the policy closely and see the different options that are being offered. You have any comments on that, Mr. McCarthy? For the options for sick leave?
Not at this time.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Weinstein.
Ms. Williams, do you have any thoughts on the sick leave policy?
So the policy is up for review. After the policy is approved, then I will put out a guidelines memo, and that's indicated here in the policy too, that the superintendent will articulate to the staff sort of the guidelines around the new law. I've already reached out to TOEA President Ms. Connolly to work in partnership with her to make sure that we're both interpreting the law in a similar way and in a way that best behooves the district and provides our students with the full support of the instructional staff, all staff really for the year, but we'll also consult with general counsel on that as well. And the law is expansive, as Mrs. Gilman said, and I think that we have to abide by that, but we're hopeful that it won't make major changes to the way we operate. And that if it does start to impact our attendance and our need for substitutes, we may have to make some changes there with how we attract substitutes to our district.
In other words, we may have to increase our substitute pay.
Yeah, but my understanding is that because this is triggered by a law, we don't, the reason I didn't have any response to your question, Madam President,
Is
is that
because
that was the only thing that confused me about it, is this law requires it, correct? We're being in compliance with the state.
It requires it.
Yeah,
it is. And Strauss Esme has recommended that we support it as well.
understood.
All right, then we will move to old business.
We do have to go through.
Oh, you have more
11.3.
policy review.
Mrs. Conway, can you pull
Excel sheet.
up the, that spreadsheet that, and can you just zoom in the bottom right corner on, yep, good. You just zoom in a little bit more, and then if you could just scroll all the way up now that we're zoomed in, up. Thank you. And then just, I apologize, but back over. There we go. Okay, so just to refresh everybody's memory on this, an item was brought up by a member of the policy committee, Mrs. Talarico, that we have not reviewed a good portion of our policies since some of them are out of review since 1972. I almost said 1772. That would be crazy. 1972. And so what was posed for a discussion of the board was potentially conducting an exhaustive review of this policy. Now, before that was even posed to the board, we contacted Strauss Esme and said, is there any legal requirement for doing so or anything like that? And it was posed to us that no, the requirement to change a policy on the board is triggered by any change to the statute. And I defer to legal counsel if I say anything incorrect here. But that is what should trigger a change to a policy. And otherwise you are in compliance. And Strauss Esme has conducted the review for you recently so that you are within compliance. And so I posed the question to the board, do we see this as a problem, or is this something that we want to move past and say, we're in compliance, this is not a useful use of the board's time. And the response from the board was, let's see how many policies we have that are out of compliance. And from there, we'll make an assessment. And we set forth the arbitrary date of how many policies would be out of compliance since January of 2010. So this would mean that how many policies have not been reviewed prior to January of 2010. So of the total number of policies that I reviewed, and I didn't read every policy, I just reviewed the dates of compliance, right? So 475 total policies, 143 of these policies, or 30%, have not been reviewed or edited since 2010. 332 have, which is roughly 69, almost 70%. If we were to, and the other discussion that was posed by the board is how we would go through the large task of reviewing all of these policies, and that it was, hey, we'd split it up between each board member. So I just posed the information here to everybody that 9 board members, that would result in roughly 16 policies for review by each member. Now, I pose this all as information to the board for consideration. We now understand this. But I would like to say, because of the last discussion that we had of all of our policy review, that I do think that before we start to go down this rabbit hole of reviewing every single policy, that we do need to come to some sort of an agreement. Maybe that agreement doesn't have to be tonight, but on what the actual goal of this review is, because I think to each one of us, there might be a different understanding of that. And that's up to the board to decide. So specifically, some of us have mentioned discussion of pronouns. Other people are just mentioning ensuring that we read and ensure that it's a relevant policy, right? I think that we should probably narrow the scope to understand what each board member will be doing. And then we can set a schedule on, if we desire to do this still, what we would do. And our legal counsel looks like he's getting ready to make a big comment here, so I would wait for a comment from him before we even have that discussion.
Thank you for reading my piece. I just have, a question.
You're not good at poker.
That was intentional. I want to get your attention. A question, since we're in a public forum, make sure we kind of are mindful of the terminology and words we're using. So when you say out of compliance, and what is the definition of that? Because just because a policy may not have been reviewed in 5 or 10 years and or updated in 5 or 10 years does not necessarily mean it's out of compliance per se, because the law might not have changed in that time frame. So I just want to make sure that we're managing kind of the message, so to speak.
Thank you. So out of compliance specifically means out of compliance with the arbitrary date set forth by the board as something that we would investigate when it has last been reviewed. But according to all statutes and regulations, we are within state compliance for the updating of policies. It is specifically whether or not we have reviewed said policy and edited it specifically, right? We've made an edit to that policy. So thank you for protecting us with that question.
You will.
Well, I think that's an excellent, clarification for us because again.
Which is why I did mention it's an arbitrary date.
Right.
We just threw a random date and said that.
And
So-
Strauss Esme says we're in compliance.
Yes.
Correct.
So legally, the board is required annually to adopt or re-adopt its policy manual. You typically do that at your annual organization meeting.
Correct.
A lot of districts use either New Jersey school boards or Strauss Esme to kind of do a policy scrub or assessment, just to verify that there's no critical updates pursuant to new statutes or administrative regulations. It sounds like that was done. However, just because they say it's okay from a legal minimum, you as a local board of education retain the right and the discretion to tweak or modify your policies to your local needs, just as long as you don't go below the legal threshold. So, if it's been done by Strauss Esme, then there's no obligation for you to review it again per se. However, there might be certain policies, whether it be curriculum, dress code, eligibility for sports, you name it, that you might want to have a heightened standard or a different standard than what is the minimum requirements. And I'll defer to you as to how you want to handle that.
So
that's
I posed the question to the board, because it is a board decision on whether or not we want to engage in this activity. And,
right.
I think that we do need to assess if this will not just be if I'm trying to be as objective as possible, I do see the merits in conducting this act. However, this will be a major drain on the board's time, and it will be a drain on the administration's time, because whether or not they are reviewing these policies, they will have to present them at every single meeting. They're going to be updating our website and all these kinds of things. Maybe that will be minimal in comparison to us, but it will be something that occurs. And I do think that we should have a very clear goal of what the purpose of this review is. Are you just reading a policy and saying that you reviewed it and that you believe that it is something that benefits the district, or is there a deeper goal here?
Excellent question, suppose. Dr. Buell.
So just a few follow-up questions. Number out of compliance, 143, means that 143 have not been reviewed since 2010.
Correct.
However, they were reviewed by Strauss Esme.
Correct.
And they are in compliance.
With the state, correct.
Okay.
Is that clear?
And
That was a
then
good question.
the date of compliance, that's the date that you used as of?
It's just for Excel to work, but 12/31/2009 allowed me to plug in a formula so that I could see how many of them have been reviewed since January of 2010. Correct.
Okay. Now, was there a point in time where there was a conversation with the previous superintendent where Strauss Esme did not do some part of their job?
I've only heard that anecdotally from members of the board in response to that conversation. So I can't speak factually on that, but I do know that I spoke specifically to a representative at Strauss Esme who assured us that we are within compliance with state standards. But other members of this board, I'm sorry, but I think specifically you have said that, and I could be wrong, but I think that you have said that review was not.
I brought up during one of the meetings, the previous superintendent said, yeah, this wasn't done, or something wasn't done. I do not recall what it was, which added to this conversation. It was something that Strauss Esme was supposed to do, or does anyone else remember that conversation?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I was just,
Well, before we get off.
And the reason why I asked that is because it then kind of helps me decide the course of action for John,
Whether or
but I
not we should-
remember.
Which would I-
Pursued.
So if someone can refresh my memory, because I just remember
I-
Strauss Esme did not do something which added to this
Which was added to
conversation.
the number of
No, the conversation
conversation.
about why we would do this.
Ms.
I-
McGovern?
I thought we had, to jog your memory and my memory, what I thought the conversation was basically that when we went into an agreement with Strauss Esme to review all of our policies, I don't think that ever got completed. Like they were gonna go through, we were gonna get that was when the policy committee was formed. Pretty
Right.
much was when we said to Strauss Esme, we want to review everything, and they were doing it kind of in stages. Okay, we'll do, get like 1 to 500 this month. We'll do 500 to 1,000 next month, or what, and go through it that way. And I don't think that was completed.
So if
So I
they-
think that's where we're saying they didn't do the job. I think the task was not completed, but I think the job that Strauss Esme has been doing of reviewing our policies that needed updating immediately has been working. It's just that the task we had tried to do.
So then I guess then that leads me to, technically, were they paid to do a job that they did not finish? So they need to finish it?
Well,
Mr.
yeah, I don't,
Someone
yeah, so when we started this process, we asked them to evaluate where we were. I don't think they were actually given a task to go through all the ones and see which ones they thought were out of date. I think that was kind of put on us because they said they were all in compliance. I think it was on our side to say, which ones do we feel like we wanted to update? So that's when we decided that we would go through the ones that were mandatory and we would update those. And so we did the mandatory ones first, and we kind of went through all of those. Now, the ones that we're doing right now, the ones that John's looking at, are the ones that are not mandatory. And so the only process that we went through with them was them helping us identify mandatory ones, I believe, that we went through between myself, Grace Ann, and Irene. We finished those up, and now these are the non-mandatory ones that we decided arbitrarily we may need to update the language or see if it's relevance and all those kind of things.
So can I just ask a follow-up question, and Mr. Taylor, you can help out? If they're policies, then they're all mandatory because that's what we use to govern. So although, yes, here's mandatory because this was recently changed in statute or code, but if we use them to govern, aren't they all mandatory?
No, mandatory was that they were reflective of some kind of law or some kind of statute, as John was saying. There are things like, we have dress codes in our school. Those are not considered mandatory. Those are our discretion. How you use phones in the school system. That's our own discretion. So we have those policies that make up really district related.
But we use
District
them to govern is my point. So even though it's not mandatory by statute, if we're going to refer a staff member to say, you can only smoke a cigarette 50 feet from whatever, if we're using that to govern, it is mandatory.
No, mandatory is the word is what's required by the state, not mandatory.
So I think you're both right. So you as a board govern yourself, manage your operations, and by extension, the superintendent administers the day-to-day operations of your school district in reliance upon that policy manual, so to speak. And so let's say a no smoking policy that may not be legally required to have by law to have, but nonetheless, most school districts have one. Or a dress code, let's say, that might not be legally required by statute, but yet most school districts have one. So is it mandatory by law? No. But once you adopt it, is it become mandatory to enforce and comply with? The answer is yes. That's what led me to my question earlier about this out of compliance language. Let's say your no smoking policy. To the extent that it wasn't reviewed in 10 years, and to the extent that there's been no statute that would modify that in 10 years, then it's in compliance. It just hasn't been touched in 10 years or reviewed. Doesn't mean it's out of compliance per se. And so I think that the issue here is you use Strauss Esme to review your policies every year. And I forget the terminology they use, but it's pretty standard across the state. It's usually part of the service you pay for. And they're just making sure they're checking the boxes to make sure that everything in there, number one, you have what's called critical policies. And every now and then you get a pretty critical policy reference manual. Those are the ones that are statutorily required to be in your phone book of a policy manual, so to speak. You have others that are discretionary, but nonetheless are very helpful and instructive to your administration, your staff, your parents, your community, et cetera. A homework policy. You might have a homework policy. There's no law for that, but you might have one. And so if you want to review and update certain things just based upon current events, trends in your community, trends in education, so to speak, best practices you all bring from your areas of expertise, then yes, you can review those, you can update those, you can change those. You just have to have 2 readings, essentially, a first reading and a second reading to make the change. And it can be implemented just as long as those changes are below whatever minimum threshold the law requires. So again, it sounds like everything's in compliance. The question is, are there any areas or issues you want to review based upon current events, so to speak?
Okay, then my last question, if I just to close it out. So, I can't remember, but I thought there was an example given. All male student, I'm making this up, all male students must wear shorts on football game days. As you can tell, I'm a football mom, but all male students must wear shorts on football days. So although it's not a requirement, we may have a policy like that that's really not relevant. So, and again, boards go over policy, like that's what we hear all the time. That's our job.
Yes.
So if there is a policy like that and we know it doesn't exist, then yeah, I'd like to tackle that one. Now, whether or not it's required, no, but if we know it's outdated, and I thought there was an example given of one that was like really out, like you must have a homework club every Monday or something, where it's like, okay, we don't
Get red shorts.
we don't
It was the
do
president.
that. Yeah,
Mr.
red
Weinstein?
shorts on.
Yeah, so in order to, so John, why don't you make a recommendation? Because you're the one who's been, this year, you've been the one involved in the most, so you make a recommendation, I'm supporting the recommendation.
You know, my recommendation would be allow the policy committee to do a cursory review of all the policies and look for ones that they believe should be updated. With the understanding that 2 individuals doing so, you know, there may be some things that fall through the cracks. But if other individuals would like to pose other opportunities for review, then we could do that. But that would be my thought process there, you know, is that we just do a quick review, that we understand that this may not be completed this year. You know, that's the other thing that we can do. We can open the aperture to conduct this more exhaustively and say, which this idea was posed initially. This idea was posed initially was, you know, we could just review, you know, this year is the time to review for updates, policies 2000 through 3000. And then next year is 4000 through 5000. We set that schedule and we go through it that way. These are things the board should. So, and then the way that it's done is that it's presented to the board. These are what we should consider updating, and then we conduct an update. That would be what I would
So
recommend.
you're saying yourself to review?
No, that we allow the policy committee to review it, and I understand that we're board of the whole and that we, you know, I can't take any action, but it would be that we just conduct a cursory review of, an example, 2000 and 3000 series policies, say these are the ones that we believe that the board should consider making amendments to, and perhaps give it up to the entire board to conduct a cursory review at that during that time period. We'll be going through this series for the next 2 months. If you see anything that you would like updated, please bring it up, you know, at that time.
Mr. Weinstein?
And I'm looking at other ways to.
I'm good with that. I was gonna say, why don't we just rip the Band-Aid off of this and everybody get 15 of them and do it? So,
Yeah.
but the only thing I would probably say is, you know, since Travis Esme has made them has already said that these are okay compliances, I probably wouldn't be as nitpicky on some of them, right? So that would be my only suggestion, right? So I say rip the Band-Aid off and let's all do it.
Well, then I would refer back to my initial question. If we're going to do that, which I have no issue with because it's a board decision and I didn't have a problem with this to begin with, but what is the purpose of the review? Is it just to, because that aperture can be wide open.
I mean, I would say we would be looking at the ones that we think maybe are frivolous, that don't really, that are outdated, don't belong. And we would basically see ones that just needed to be modernized a little bit. That would be my thing, is to just tighten it, for lack of a better term, to tighten it up a little bit, just
Thanks for
push it up a
sharing.
little bit.
Ms. Hayes.
I agree with what Jeff's saying, that we should just split it up. I think for whatever reason, we didn't do this years ago. If we were a corporation, a multi-million dollar, $89 million corporation with all these rules and reporting procedures, I don't know if we would say, well, we're kind of in compliance, but nobody's looked at it since 2010. I mean, that is not how businesses work. I think if it only takes us a couple hours, rip the Band-Aid off. I mean, we're all competent, educated individuals. If it's just changing some pronouns or some take extensive work. I mean, I feel like for whatever reason, there was an action before. So why don't we just try to modernize and bring things up to speed?
Yeah, and personally,
I'm sorry.
go ahead. No, I was not recognized, please.
Ms. Parlavas.
So how
I'll come
will
back
it be, reviewed, like with the whole board? So are we gonna bring back our 16 policies and go through them individually, or are we just going to rely on the changes that each board member is going to make?
My recommendation would be that we divvy up the 16 policies. Each individual has 16 policies to read through and review, and then they bring forward what they believe is, I mean, based on that recommendation, what needs to be modernized and what is not necessary for the district to be
So
removed.
it will be reviewed by the whole board.
We
Or we
can't,
change.
yeah, no board member can make action
Right,
without the whole board approving.
okay.
Amy.
Can I just suggest then that maybe we do it month by month? I mean, we take 9 months to do it. And maybe you just say, okay, Amy, you take the first month, here are your 16 policies. So that then, as you said, with the taxation on our district, then maybe it's, one board member a month. And I think we do need to, like you said, like you keep saying, like Alex, I'm sorry, Ms. Hayes, you keep saying like pronouns, like, so.
I thought
Right. So, but to John's point, like, are we even touching, like, I don't know that, I think it's just more of tightening up policies. I think tightening up, changing everything is gonna really open up, it's gonna take forever. So I feel.
That even goes first.
So like, I think that we do it that way, where you say one person so Amy, by the end of October, the first meeting in October, you have to have those two things or something. So the policy committee is gonna need time to divvy up the 16 to everybody. So you guys could divvy up the 16 and make a schedule and say, this is your time. You have the 2 meetings in October to get your first and second reading and it gets approved. Then we move along.
It does sound daunting.
Do you like that, Chuck?
Where are you getting the number 16
Yeah.
from? I'm sorry, I missed that.
43 divided by 9 members comes out to 16.
But those are quote unquote out of compliance, but I got you.
Just from
Okay.
2010.
Before
Okay.
2010.
There's like 1990s.
All right. And so,
Policies that
just in looking at your policy manual, the bylaws section is 0. Now, I understand that you operate as a committee of the whole. So when I looked at 0155, I don't see any standing committees per se. So is there actually a policy committee, or it sounds like there isn't one?
No, there is.
There is. Okay. I didn't see it.
Hi, how are you?
Good evening. I didn't see it in 0155. What I was going to suggest to try to help expedite this, which sounds like it's been a nagging issue, so to speak,
Yeah.
from prior boards, quite frankly. So it's not, no offense to anyone here. But, for instance, if you have a policy committee, you have a finance committee, you have a buildings and grounds committee, do you have those too or no?
Yes.
So perhaps each of those committees can review the policies within their lane, so to speak, and make recommendations to the board, working in conjunction with the administration, because you have a lot of zeros in your salary, but there's no number in front of those zeros, but they make a lot of money. Part of their job is also to make recommendations. Since part of this is compliance with the law, it might be best to get some of their input too, just to see if there's any legal updates. The pronouns and things like that, standing requests, administration, circle all the he's and she's and make it a we or whatever it is, so that we can move on with that. And it's less time that you all have to spend doing it. This is one suggestion to help you move through the process, but I'll defer to you as to, that might help it get done in, let's say, 60 days versus 9 months. That's all.
Got fired by that administration.
For saying that, so it's
Just having done this entire-
Mr. Taylor, and I appreciate that suggestion, if it works for our board.
Just
to
just
have-
having done this entire. We would then need to. I would then need to go back through every single policy and determine what falls under every individual
Yeah.
committee. I appreciate the recommendation, but I disagree.
Yeah.
That is rather
Yeah.
a harsh.
I'm sorry. And
Yes.
just one other suggestion is that everybody take a policy every month. So one person isn't stuck with 16 policies in 1 month. And, maybe it's a bad month for you,
Right.
So maybe that is a better way, or whatever, however. we
It could be an undue burden and that works.
Yeah, I think that would be a little.
Seriously, that's fine. with me. I can divvy this up, no problem. I'm trying to put it forward to the board. I would prefer that.
That's a good idea.
I would too, especially as we come into
Because
the
I don't
fall.
see a useful.
Excuse me, I don't hear this
Yeah.
conversation.
I apologize.
Please don't have a private conversation.
They're not, they're just.
I know, I just can't hear it, and neither can we up here. So if you have something to
I
say,
apologize.
please contribute it to the group.
I do.
Yes,
I would like to have a policy committee meeting. Because we haven't had one all year.
So, I mean, in my previous experience in policy committee meetings, nothing really is accomplished because that all needs to be brought in front of the board anyway, because we're a committee of the whole.
Okay.
So I
but-
don't,
Excuse me, but we did complete, except for 2 bylaws, the entire section last year.
understood, but I don't
So
think,
how is it?
I don't see that as a useful opportunity of the board's time.
It's not, but I don't agree with that at all.
so since John is the policy chair and we keep going around and around, nothing seems to be
We haven't.
gelling. I will defer to you, Mr. McCarthy, to
Understood.
come up with for our next meeting, a recommendation to either divvy up X number of policies for each board member and how you want those presented monthly, or to however many you feel would not be an undue burden and would not take up excessive amount of time. I think we're belaboring this. I think that Mr. Taylor has said to us, we are in compliance. We have a company, Strauss Esme. If we are intent on updating or modernizing certain things, we really should look at what we want to update and modernize. And, I'll leave that up to you.
Understood.
Okay,
I'll have that at the next meeting.
thank you. We're gonna move on. All business. Yes,
I have, a couple of questions here. And I don't know if this would have to be directed to Mr. Taylor. Do we have an insurance policy in this district that covers like director and officers' liabilities? And have we paid, I'm sorry, maybe it wouldn't be Mr. Taylor, it would be Mr. Hastings. Have we paid it? Did we used to pay it? Do we have this policy now? So that some of these legal fees that people are talking about might actually be covered by insurance that we pay for?
So you're talking about board member indemnification?
No, like when you have a corporation, correct? I'm not the biggest.
There's no directors.
The directors-
Officers liability.
To have an officer, we used to though, so I'm wondering if we paid it or if we still do it.
I've been board member.
what is your question? Is it about the legal fees for indemnification?
No, I'm asking if we have an insurance policy that covers directors and officers' liabilities to pay for it, not that the indemnification that the board then pays for legal fees. Do we have insurance that then would cover legal fees?
For us, or I don't know.
When
When you say boards, I'm sorry, who are members, who are?
In the world of business, as I understand it, you can buy insurance so that if your CEO, your board of directors are sued, that insurance company would then cover the legal fees.
So I could defer to Mr. Taylor, or he can correct me, but generally speaking, we have an errors and omissions policy that the board, that the district has that covers, indemnifies all employees and board members as well in terms of acts or errors things that they may do that would be deemed improper, or somebody may challenge, maybe not criminal activities, but civil sorts of things, I suppose. And then that's written into the policy.
So, and I'll just add, because this question is general in nature, but it also relates back to a specific issue, which has been already asked and answered, which is my understanding per the representation of the former acting business administrator before you got here, is that while it is possible to have a policy that may cover board members are not employees, but for the type of claim in question, i.e. an ethics complaint against a board member, that you don't have that line in your policy. So is it possible to get it? Sure. Does the district have it now? No.
Okay.
But also, as previously explained to the board, even if you did have that policy in place that would cover a board member pursuant to state statute title 18A, individual board members have every right to select their own lawyer with or without going through the carrier from the district.
Sure.
And even if the district does or did have insurance for that or any other type of claim, there still is a deductible that would attach to that. So the district would still have to come out of pocket, whether it's $5,000, $10,000. I have clients with $250,000 deductible before the coverage kicks in.
Ours was $20,000.
Which was $20,000, yes. So even in that instance, even if you did have coverage, you still be paying $20,000 out of pocket before that coverage kicked in. However, what I would suggest you do is perhaps ask the business administrator for a review of what your coverages are. I would probably say review that in closed session, because I don't want it to tip off the public to where your weaknesses are and what to sue you for, quite frankly. Number one, and number two, if there are specific requests, typically I would imagine you go out to RFP on an annual or semi-annual basis, and if you need to add coverage layers in consultation with your administration, you can decide what you want to have, understanding that might drive up your premiums.
Exactly. I don't think we're in the market for increasing our premiums at this point. Anything else in old business? New business. Mr. McCarthy.
So we did have a nice meeting last week with Senator Gopal, who came to visit us, the Legislative Liaison Committee. So just provide some updates from that discussion. We specifically asked if he would be open to meeting twice annually. He said that he would be more than willing to do so, and that we could schedule it. He agreed to a meeting cadence of end of the summer and beginning of the calendar year. So this is something that, pending re-election is going to occur. We focused specifically our discussion on the S2 bill and asked for updates regarding the S2 funding formula and the reallocation of S2 funding specific to our district. We are fortunate that our district representative, Senator Gopal, is the education committee chairman in the state senate. So he is very much tied into all of that. So he has a lot of information regarding it. He did agree with us regarding the formula itself, that there are existing issues with the formula that he's hoping to find ways to amend. Specifically, which has been brought to his attention by previous presidents of the Board of Education, an inability to factor in the depreciation of assets, inability to fund appropriate amounts of money towards special education for districts and things like that due to the way that the funding formula is structured. He did touch on the bill that he put forward to create a task force to examine the S2 funding formula and the reallocation of funding. That did make it, and this has been reported previously, but just to update everybody, it did make it out of the Senate with full approval. I don't know. I know there was a majority approval. I think an overwhelming majority of the Senate, if not unanimous, but it did die in committee on the Assembly floor. So for the layman's terms, that means that the bill needs to make it through the Senate and the Assembly to be ratified and then be signed by the governor, but it died in committee, didn't even make it onto the Assembly floor. So because of the way that they are structured in Trenton, that means that it needs to be reintroduced the next time they are back in session. So they're not in session, and every 2 years that resets. So that bill is basically done, and for it to be brought back up, he needs to reintroduce it. With that, the S2 funding formula is set to end next year. I think next year it's set to end. And so he specifically mentioned he's debating whether or not he's going to reintroduce the bill to create a task force, or whether he's going to try to encourage the Senate and the Assembly to change the funding formula for the schools in the state, because most of the representatives across the state admit that there are flaws in the funding formula that need to be addressed. So he's hopeful that he's going to be able to encourage some of his peers to do that. He did note that there are certain counties that have benefited greatly from the way that the current funding formula is structured. So he didn't, give us a guarantee or a point of view on that, but it is possible that changes to the formula may not actually occur. And considering that his district has been heavily hit by it, there's not much that we can do from our point of view to encourage change, unless you have friends that live in Essex or Camden County, and you can ask them to change their constituents or their representatives' points of view. We also discussed the fact that we discussed all loss of funding. So specifically, we brought up the fact that in FY23, we lost roughly north of $450,000. And Mr. Hastings, jump in here if I miss anything on funding or if I speak incorrectly, please. So we touched on that. He did point out that with our supplemental aid that we're going to be receiving next year, our loss of funding, which was initially projected to be just south of $50,000, is only going to be around $17,000. Right. Thank you. So that's a benefit to us. One of the questions that Mr. Hastings did ask is if that solving, that 30,000 that we're given in supplemental aid is going to carry through to the following budgets, or if it's going to be reallocated in the next budget. We didn't get an answer on that because Senator Gopal was unaware at the time, because he doesn't know yet. That's going to be determined at a later date. So there's a possibility that funding is recouped later on, but there's also a possibility that it's not. So I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And he did mention that in the future, it does look as though reductions to funding are going to be minimal for us due to our increase in enrollment from our pre-K program, which I think is a big deal and should really be applauded to the district that we were able to expand that program to a point where it's actually adding a positive in terms of funding for all of us. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. We did discuss just a request that you support us in any opportunities to find districts that would like to send students to our schools, wherever that may be within his realm. So if there are areas that people would like to send students to Ocean Township, and he has relationships that can further that to increase our enrollment, and he was more than willing to support that. He said to let us know. He also did pledge that he would provide any sort of funding he could for studies to support those sorts of things that would show that it would be a benefit to an outside district to send their students to our schools. But he did say that impetus falls on our district. The administration took that for a note and said that they would consider it and look for opportunities to expand it. We received a lot of information about what's going on the different districts that are going to be sending their students to the Henry Hudson Regional School in Atlantic Highlands, and that district has grown massively because of that, and other districts have sort of regionalized to send their students there. And then he did just have some questions about how our district was dealing with the anonymity of the LGBTQ students and that sort of thing, just to understand the way that it's impacting our district, and took that in for consideration, just to consider what he would do for future legislation regarding those activities, and asked us on how we're executing those things. And that pretty much wrapped up the meeting. I'll leave it to anyone else who was present to add anything that I may have missed.
He continues to look for ways to increase our funding through grants.
Absolutely, yes.
Encourages us to apply.
I apologize for
that.
that.
Always lets us know what's available. He is working on our behalf in an incredible capacity. We're very lucky to have him in our corner. Anything else that
It was just
you
a good
recall?
meeting.
It was
Yeah.
very productive. And I appreciate your notes were very good. Ms. Paralamas, anything else you wanted to?
John was very thorough.
He was very thorough on that. Question?
Oh, no, I had other stuff, sorry.
For new business?
Yes.
Yes.
Two things. I thought that was great. Isn't legislative committee, though, a committee. Can we put this on the agenda next time rather than new or old? I don't know why we're saving it for new or old. I feel like that was a presentation with possibly even minutes that isn't that a committee? Like the mental health is on,
It doesn't, mental
Yeah.
health goes, I do under new business too. Or old business. I usually do old business and.
okay, I thought it was worthy of a committee ship mention on the agenda. The reason why I saved this up for the new section rather than the old is because I did want to expand upon my comments from earlier, switching gears here. When I was talking about trying to bring up further attorney costs that this district pays, and somebody in public comment mentioned that I'm a big proponent of transparency, and the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because if we're going to discuss legal fees here in a public forum, this is literally the first time ever, despite repeated Oprah requests from residents in like 5 years to ask for legal fees to be made public. And the previous administration, previous superintendent never allowed that. So if we're going to make assumptions about what we think we're taking away from the betterment of students, the reason why I brought up other legal fees is specifically for that transparency. In the last 4 years, we spent $340,000 on special ed attorney fees. And some might say it's apples to oranges, but I brought it up for transparency's sake, because if we're going to talk about $16,000 spent on XYZ for something that's brand new and we're recently discussing, but we are completely disregarding the fact that we have never, ever revealed our attorney fees. But now Attorney Taylor says that we can, as long as we don't, say the cases or whatever, if it's that specific. I looked pretty extensively at public documents and the fact that we also approved $170,000 for a salary.
Again, Ms. Hayes, that is a personnel.
It is not, because we voted on it. We voted on it. It was not personal. It's the salary. It's in closed session.
That should not be discussed in public. Please refrain from discussing that. Please refrain from discussing that.
In this year's average costs to to homeowners, it's about $300 that we're all paying in extra taxes. That's $550,000. 550 homeowners that make up $170,000.
I'm not sure where this discussion is going. This is an extraordinary situation where board members have filed ethics complaints against other board members. That's never been done on the Ocean Township.
And we have never attorney fees. We don't even know how much attorney fees. Excuse me.
We're not going to take up our public time.
Why are we saying some attorney fees if we're not discussing the rest of them?
From a point of order standpoint, are we in the new business section?
Yes, we are.
All right, so I guess the question should be devoted to new business. It sounds like the question or comments are about old issues that were discussed. So if you have a new business question or comment, I would respectfully ask that be put on the table for discussion. And I would also just say, as I indicated before, legal fees, just like your phone bill, just like every other bill that this district pays, is public information. I can't opine or comment on what your prior superintendent or administration or lawyers may have said. But as I'll reiterate that the amount of fees you pay to any of your professionals, public salaries are all public information, whether it's by open request or not. As I indicated earlier, the itemized detail may not be subject to public disclosure, but the overall amount is. So I would just, through your board chair, just ask that if there's a new business question or comment, please proceed with that. If not, perhaps you can move on.
That sounds like sound advice. We're going to move on to public comment. Would anyone from the public like to comment on any item at this time? Anyone in the auditorium? Ms. Sylvia.
Again, it's Sylvia, 200 Lincoln. And I understand it makes maybe some of the board members more comfortable if I say that I am a state board member, but I am here as a resident. I did check. I'm not required to do that because I am here as a resident. I'm also not here as a tax board commissioner. I don't have to say that, but if it makes anybody feel better for me to do that, I will, and I will do that every time I stand here, not because I'm required to, but because if it makes somebody feel, it doesn't hurt me to say. So I wanted to just, and then I'm all over here again, just like I was earlier with comments, and one of the board members earlier was asking about an insurance policy and said something to the effect of, in addition to the one that the board already pays for. Just to be clear, the board doesn't pay for anything. The people of this town pay for everything. The board does it, as residents you do, just like the rest of us, but the board doesn't take a checkbook out and write things. You do not pay for anything. We all pay for everything, just to be clear. Again, as far as this particular expense, and thank you, Mr. Taylor, about the legal fees are public information. Again, the board doesn't pay it, the people pay it. The specifics are not necessarily public information, but the amount is public information. And to describe something that a previous employee may or may not have said when he's not here to say that he did or didn't, I think is a little bit irrelevant in this room. The reason why it's so important that we have this presentation about how much this is going to cost isn't because it's not to do anything mean to anybody. Yes, we are entitled to see the expenses for our regular budget, but this is a new and different thing. We just spent 20 grand, I think. That's the first go round on this. So yeah, it's important that we know that. This isn't something that was budgeted for and that I'm aware of. I don't know that there's a line item for a board member can't get along with another board member, so I'm filing a complaint. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not the smartest person in the room. I had a couple of questions. I'm going to get off that for a second and go over to the policy committee. I'm a little bit confused. When you say that you're going to take policies, are you guys like writing them? Or what are you doing? What are you doing with them?
Reviewing them.
Reviewing. And my concern is that they're like Strauss Esme is who we use as a district to review these things, and they have the industry and professional knowledge to know what's legal and what needs to be in there versus leaving that on any one of you. Like that's a responsibility and a burden that I don't know is something you signed up for when you volunteered for these positions. You're not like, what if you miss something like that? That's a paramount concern. Like they have to be done by professionals. Like I sat here with you guys, well, with Denise and with Amy. We didn't write the policies. They were brought to us by the administration and the professionals for us to review, not to review them first, write them and then see if we did it right. And then to have Strauss Esme review every single one. I think it's a noble idea, but it's something that you're probably going to have to find more Strauss Esme money for, because what they do for us is important because you have to be aligned. And I think Mr. McCarthy mentioned earlier about statutory legality, like those things. That's important. Like we didn't write anything when I was here. You have to comply with the state. And again, I know that you're dealing with like two kinds of different states here. It's the State Department of Education, but also the administration. And when you say statutory, that's the Assembly and Senate. That's that side. They make these rules. And then Strauss Esme gives you the information about how you implement them, which is what your job is as a governing body. So that concerns me a little bit. And I thank Mr. Taylor for being concerned about the finance of that, because we're looking at a big hit this year on something else. I would rather see this be done with more forethought, not saying that you're not thinking about it. I appreciate the commitment here to getting those done right. But to make sure that you've got budgeted money for the professionals to really review your review. And I also, you already give enough of your time up. I don't want to see you doing things that are not going to be fruitful for that time. I had, and sometimes I'm a little bit slow. I know Mr. Riley, who's the Teachers Association president prior to our current president, had said something at a meeting like a month or two ago and talking about negotiations. And I swear this just occurred to me today, and I was Googling it, trying to find who it is. Because it occurred to me, why would that be brought up specifically? Who's the negotiations chair? Is there, who's?
I believe it's Ms. Tallarico.
Ms. Torello is the.
Ms. Tortorella.
Ms. Tortorello, and then Ms. Tallarico is the co-chair.
Okay, so, all right, that's. Okay, that's it. Okay, but I understand Mrs. Torello, she's not running again, correct? I'd be a little bit concerned with having the complainant be in charge of negotiations. I'd rather see maybe anybody involved in the current conditions, maybe are not the people that might want to be in charge of negotiations, but we need to make sure that our staff is being treated fairly, but also that our public is being treated fairly. Everybody walks away a little bit happy and a little bit not happy. That's the way good negotiations go. And if we don't have our staff, the crux of what we do for our kids, they have to have your job as a negotiations team here. With the teacher, the union, their job is to protect their union, and your job is to protect the union and the rest. It's multi-pronged. So I'd be a little bit more relieved on that. I was going to speak a little bit about the reply to the complaint because I read that, but honestly, I don't want to take up any more time. What I want to do is tell you, after hearing all the stuff, like what a great job. Like what a great job you guys are doing. What a great job the administration, the staff, the board, you give so much of yourself. And I want to say just that, like the preschool waiting list, like all of the things that you're doing and all the things that are hopeful. But in my head, it's like saying, besides that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Like that's like trying to get past what's going on here. It's impossible. And that's not the important thing that goes on in this room. The important thing is the dedication to our students and the populace. But I can't get past it. And I honestly don't think anybody else can. I would rather see you take all the money that you would spend on lawyers. Again, no offense, Mr. Taylor, because you're awesome. But like, what about it like a retreat? I know it sounds like marriage counseling, but you all are so valuable and all of your individual perspectives bring so much to the table, but you just can't stop fighting. If you're a hammer, then everybody else is a nail. Who cares if the roll call went out of order? You're one person, you got one vote. Just answer it. Everything isn't the thing. Everything doesn't have to be done. I don't even want to come here. I like to watch it at home where it's not raining. But I value you all, and I want to see you do better at the getting along part. And I know I'm looking at you, Denise, and you're the last person I'm even thinking about when I say this. I thank you for everything that you're doing. I think that it can be done better with maybe some professional development. You're still required to do the governance training every year, correct?
Yes.
I think like that money that you spend on legal fees, I'd rather see you spend it on professional development with each other. And I don't want to see anybody who's here not be here again, but I can't in good conscience ever support a number of people who I always was so like happy to see. Like I was happy to see, and I don't feel that way anymore, and I don't think I'm alone in that. So I think I took up everybody's 3 minutes. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the auditorium? Oh, don't steal our pen. Yes. Could you go to the microphone, please? Give us your name.
How are you? We have to put our name.
Yes, please do. She had spoken in the first public comment. And
Oh, okay, then this is the second list? Okay, sorry. Okay, well, I'm Helena Coles. I live here in Ocean Town. And the reason I came up was a couple of things. First of all, errors and omissions policies protect a professionally licensed person, their organization, and the individual workers that they're employed, that individual workers of those companies. That's what E&O covers. And directors and officers is actually provides coverage for the individual board members, legal, defense, costs, things like that. So that E&O would not be a supplement or come into play in this environment because you guys are not licensed professionals like a doctor, an insurance agent, a dentist. That's who buys E&O. Also, so that I wanted to say. But then the other thing is, I know that there's a lot of conversation, obviously on social media about this ethics complaint. And what do you call it? There's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of comments on social media, everything I've kind of dumped publicly. I really don't know how that happened, but usually that doesn't happen. But I have some, I'm trying to get my phone here. I'm sorry. Hold on one second. The light is very low. Okay. All right. Well, what I wanted to bring up was, again, legal protection is available with directors and officers. So kind of answered the question as to why it's becoming a tax burden on the people, because obviously there is no policy in place. So that's why we're paying this expenses. Granted, there would be a deductible, but at this point in time with this complaint, you don't know how much your legal fees are going to be. It could far exceed whatever the deductible would have been. I do know that, not very versed in all this stuff, but I do know that mostly ethics complaints can also be responded to without legal counsel and would cost $0 to the taxpayer. So I have no idea why this became something where everybody felt there had to be outside legal counsel. I don't know the answer to that. Not expecting you guys to explain it, but it's just something that I'm, looking at saying, why did this happen? Okay. And it's also my understanding that the Ethics Commission pretty much keeps everything very confidential until they make a ruling. So again, I have no idea why the complaints or responses or anything like that have been shared publicly and on social media. I don't know how that happened. And then lastly, I want to say that to assume that these ethic violations are frivolous is a bit premature. As adults, I think we all should realize that even nice people do wrong things. Okay, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I'm saying everybody's jumping to something saying everybody's so nice. Okay, well, there's several pages of the complaint, and once everything pans itself out, I think we're all best to let the facts be reviewed and determination be made before defending or crucifying anyone here, because I think it's very sad when drama becomes more important than the facts that are yet to be presented, yet to be determined. And I think we should all kind of wait for that because, there's pages and pages of things, and some people may think it's frivolous and some people may think it's ridiculous. Okay. But there's a reason why it got to this point. And you can shake your head all you want, John, but there's a reason it got to this point where this had to be, where somebody felt that it was necessary to do this. And once everything gets reviewed, the facts come out, and whatever that determination is as to the validity of those allegations, it'll come out. And that'll be that. And if someone needs to be held accountable, or there's nothing to be held accountable, well, that'll come out too. But right now, I don't see any reason to have to keep harping on how horrible this is. And I do feel bad that it got to this point for whatever reason it did. I'm not privy to that. Obviously, none of us are. But I feel bad that it got to this point. Well, let's take a step back and realize there could be facts here that we know nothing about, just like in a trial. You don't condemn a person or make them guilty before the trial's over. And you certainly, if somebody's a victim or an accuser, you can't pass judgment on something until it's finished. So move on, stop with the crucifying people. Oh, how could you possibly do this? Or this person saying, oh, that person must have done it, they're guilty. And none of that's been proven for anybody. And I think it's really important as a community that we act like adults and stop already. It's childish, actually. I think it's very high school. All this stuff going on social media, it's ridiculous. I think we're better than that. We're like adults here, and this is the kind of role model where for our kids, and we're all going to sit here and snipe each other. And you got telephone tough guys back there on the Facebook page, but God forbid they should get up and say anything in public. They're all sitting there telling you, oh, why don't you do it? You say it, you do it. Come on, we're adults. Stop it already. That's all I have to say. But good luck with everything, and I hope you guys work this out. I hope it doesn't cost us a fortune. Thanks.
For your comments. Ms. Conway, is there anyone else in the queue who would like to make a comment?
No, Madam President, there are no virtual commenters.
Thank you very much. I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for attending.